I particularly want to thank Senator Casey for his steadfast, dogged perseverance in the pursuit of this issue. He has stayed with it, he has advocated it, he has been persistent and persuasive, and I just want to thank you. You have really exemplified what this body should be all about, and it's to care about the American people and to take steps to alleviate their pain. When they're in trouble, they have a friend in Pennsylvania. The people of America have a friend in Pennsylvania, and I deeply appreciate it. Madam President, I used to teach a course in college called Leaders and Leadership, and I used case studies of different people, and it was a very eclectic group. It ranged from Ernest Shackleton to Joshua Chamberlain to Winston Churchill to Margaret Thatcher and to a guy named Jack Welch, who was the president of General Electric and one of the great business leaders of the late 20th and early 21st century. One of Jack Welch's favorite quotes that is one of my favorites is that the essence of leadership is to look reality in the eye and then do something about it. Look reality in the eye and then do something about it. Well, I want to talk about some realities this afternoon. The reality is that we are an aging population. 10,000 people a day qualify for Medicare. 10,000 people a day. We are an aging population. My state of Maine is, in fact, the oldest state in America. How old are we? Our junior senator is 77. The state of Maine and the country are aging. That's a reality. We can wish it away, we can act like it's not really happening, but that is an enormous demographic wave that's coming at us right now. As the baby boomers retire and enter their 60s and 70s, this is a reality that we have. 10,000 people a day. Another reality is that more and more of these people require care. That's in the nature of our physical being. And the older people get, they require care. So the real question is, how are we going to care for these people? Thousands of them, hundreds of thousands, end up in nursing homes, in long-term care. And those facilities do yeoman work, and they take wonderful care of people. But 60% of the people in long-term care are paid for by Medicaid. 60% of the people in long-term care are paid for by Medicaid. That's important because I'm going to be making the argument that the investments that we're making in this bill are in fact investments that will actually diminish expenditures in other areas. Here's another reality. It costs about $26,000 a year to provide home and community-based services for a person with disabilities or a senior who needs those services. $26,000 a year. Long-term care in a nursing home is over $90,000 a year. Almost 4 times as much. So, and let me add one more reality, and then I'll come to the conclusion. Not the conclusion of the whole remarks. I don't want to get your hopes up, Madam President, but the conclusion on this point. Part of the reality is most seniors don't want to go to nursing homes until they have to. I used to go around Maine with my Commissioner of Human Services with groups of seniors and say, how many of you want to go to a nursing home? No hands went up. Not that nursing homes don't give great care and they provide an essential need, but most people would like to stay in their houses, in their homes, close to their community, close to their family, as long as they can. So if you take the financial reality that it's almost 1/4, 25%, maybe 30% is expensive to keep them in their homes, the taxpayers are paying 60% of the costs of nursing homes. People want to be home. All of that argues in favor of enabling people to stay home. Every day that someone stays out of a long-term care facility, it saves the taxpayers about almost $200 every day for each day. So if you can keep people in their homes longer, it's a good financial investment. It also provides preventive care and services. That's one of the realities. The other reality is, as Senator Casey mentioned, people with disabilities, people who are trapped. As he was making his remarks, I was thinking about the fundamental promise of America in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Abraham Lincoln once said that every political opinion he had derived from the Declaration of Independence. In my case, every political opinion I have derived from Abraham Lincoln. But the Declaration of Independence talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you're disabled, if you couldn't walk up these stairs and you don't have some help, you don't have much of a life. And you certainly don't have liberty. All we think of is liberty to walk out your door, go to the store, go to church, interact with our children. If you can't do those things, you don't have liberty, and you certainly don't have much happiness. So we're talking about the fundamental promise of America: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it simply means giving people the help they need. And they need it through no fault of their own. Nobody's fault is when they get older. That's not your fault. And disability isn't your fault. The fellow that Senator Casey talked about, who was injured playing football in high school, he wasn't at fault. He wasn't at fault. And this kind of thing can happen to anybody. So that's really what we're talking about. The reality is that we have a demographic tidal wave coming at us. And the question is, are we going to deal with it actively and confront it, or are we simply going to sit back and say it's like it's always been? It's not like it's always been. We've never had a demographic boom in the seniors like we're going to have in the next 20 years. Our generation, my generation, are the pig in the python of the demographics of this country. And we're going to have to confront it. So how do we confront it? We confront it in a number of ways. We confront it in several ways. The home care provisions of this bill are one of the ways to confront it. And there's also a hidden economic benefit here. If people need care, they're going to get it one way or another. They may well, in many cases, be getting it from their children, who then can't go to work. We desperately need workers in this economy right now, but they're locked up because they can't leave home. They can't leave their elderly mom. So to have the home-based services liberates people in order to participate in the economy. What can we do about it? We can do something about the wages of these people, of the people working in this industry who are providing this essential care and are making $12 an hour, among the lowest pay in our society. How do we know that pay is inadequate? 50% turnover in a home-based care company, a home-based care exercise in the community, 50% turnover is considered good. 100% turnover in a year is not unusual. That tells you there's a real problem in the compensation of the workforce. So this bill provides funds to improve the living standard of the people that are providing these services. It provides training. It provides a career path. It provides hope for people, not only those who are giving the services, but those who are providing, who are needing the services. I believe this is an investment, Madam President. This is the right investment in the right people at the right time. And I deeply hope that our colleagues will come together to support this investment in a timely way, not wait until it's too late. Why not wait until thousands of lives are restricted and constrained? But let's do the right thing now. We know what the reality is. This bill provides us a golden opportunity to meet it. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
I want to thank my